He froze. The crowded hall around him blurred into silence as his eyes locked onto the woman cleaning rifles at the far end of the armory. Her sleeve slipped back just enough to reveal a faded tattoo. His unit's insignia. The same unit the world believed had been wiped out years ago. His heart pounded. How could she be here? And why was she hiding their mark? The general's chest tightened as though the air itself had turned heavy. The hall was filled with new recruits, their chatter blending into a dull hum. But he heard none of it. All he could see was her. The woman bent over a weapon bench, hands steady, cloth moving across cold steel with a rhythm that spoke of discipline, precision, and memory. And then that glimpse, the tattoo. Not just ink. A mark carved from fire and loss. His lost unit's insignia. The world believed they had vanished in the desert years ago, swallowed by fire and silence. He had buried every name himself. Or so he thought. He tried to breathe, but each inhale dragged him deeper into memory. The sandstorms that had choked the sky, the stench of smoke mixed with iron and dust, the echo of his men's voices, cut short by an ambush that had left him half-deaf in one ear and fully alone in spirit. They had called themselves a family, not a unit. He had watched that family burn. For years he carried the guilt like a second skin. And now, in this hall, that scar of ink lived again. On her. She looked young, younger than the years that had stolen his comrades. But her eyes, when she glanced up briefly, carried the same weight he knew too well. The gaze of someone who had walked through flames and lived to tell no one. Around them, the recruits were laughing, mocking the older general they thought was too broken to lead. He heard whispers about his limp, his fading scars, his so-called weakness. They laughed because he stayed silent. They didn't know silence was his weapon. Respect is not demanded, he once told his men. It is carried like a shield. Those who mock silence never survive its echo. But now his silence was cracking, because her presence was not a coincidence. As he stepped closer, the recruits grew louder, their jabs sharper. They saw him stumble once, and it fed their cruelty. Yet she never lifted her eyes. She kept wiping the rifle, cloth steady, as though the world's noise could not touch her. That calm resistance stung sharper than any words. And then it happened. Her sleeve slipped higher, the full insignia revealed. Clear, unmistakable, his lost family's mark, burned into her skin like fire that never went out. The general's voice, rough and broken, escaped before he could contain it. No one bears that mark without earning it. The hall fell silent. The recruits who had been mocking moments ago froze, their smirks dissolving into unease. For the first time, they noticed the way she held herself. Not like a janitor. Not like a civilian. Like a soldier forged in storms they could never imagine. Her eyes finally met his, calm, unflinching, and in that gaze he saw what words could never hold. She had carried on when the world buried their names. She had lived when others had fallen. She had chosen silence not out of fear, but out of loyalty, to something larger than herself. He straightened, his limp suddenly less noticeable. The recruits shifted uneasily. The weight in the room had changed. "You mock scars," the general said, his voice steady now. "Because you've never carried one, but she carries ours. And you will stand in respect." The recruits, ashamed and stunned, rose slowly to their feet. Silence filled the hall. Not the silence of cruelty, but the silence of honor. The woman gave no smile, no nod, only a steady glance that said everything. Her silence was her salute, and in that moment the general understood. His unit had never been lost. It lived in those who carried their mark, in those who endured unseen, in those who never needed to shout their loyalty. "Honor is not spoken," he said quietly. "It is lived." The recruits bowed their heads, and the woman returned to her work, cloth steady against steel, carrying the weight of 1,000 untold stories.